Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the Local Pension Board, which is obviously being live streamed, and it's being held in accordance with the local authorities coronavirus meetings Wales Regulations 2020. And I've been asked to point out that there may obviously be some glitches in the meeting, and I've been assured that the committee section will learn from each glitch and keep striving towards a seamless process. And I've seen the process work with Swansea very well in different meetings. Obviously, a number of participants may have issues with bandwidth, etc. And the suggestion is that if that does become an issue, that participants turn off their video. A reminder that the meeting is being broadcast live so that members of the public and others may view it. And finally, a request that you mute your microphones until you're ready to speak, and then remember to unmute them when called to speak. Unless there's any questions there, can I just welcome Councillor Mike Lewis of Swansea to his first meeting of the board. Welcome, Mike. And the Democratic Services Officer, Alison, will now call out the names of all present. And can I ask you to please repeat your names, please?
Thank you, Chair. For the attendance record, Ian Guy.
Yes, Ian Guy.
We have Councillor Mike Lewis.
Yes, Councillor Mike Lewis.
And we have David White.
Yes, David White, Unison representative.
Thank you. I've had apologies from the other three representatives this morning, Chair. Apologies from Rosemary Broad, David McCarus, and I believe that Alan Lockyer has also given his apologies as well.
Yes, he's given his apologies. He's asked me to pass on his apologies.
And then the officers present, Jeff Dong.
Present, Jeff Dong.
Karen Cobb.
Present, Karen Cobb.
Thank you. Steph Williams, legal representative.
Present, Stephanie Williams.
And I'm Alison Lowe, Democratic Services Officer.
Thank you very much. How are we going to deal with declarations of interest? Are you going to supply a form, Alison? For
yeah,
us
I'll email a form round for those who declare an interest.
Okay. What about any members of for the benefit of any members of the public who are?
You'll need to verbally declare your interests now, please, Chair.
Okay. Well, I've got an interest in every item on the agenda because I'm a member of the LGPS.
Councillor Lewis, do you have an interest?
Yes, the same interest as Ian. I'm a member of the pension fund as well.
David White?
As per the whole agenda, and a member of the pension fund as well.
Okay, and the officers, Jeff Dong?
Yes, whole agenda, a member of the LGPS.
And Karen Cobb?
Whole agenda, member of the LGPS.
Steph Williams?
Yes, whole agenda, member of the LGPS.
And the same for myself, I'm a member of the LGPS. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, which takes us on to the first item on the agenda proper, and that's the election of a vice chair to replace Councillor White. And before I call for nominations, can I say that I'm sure the whole board will join me in thanking Councillor White for the service he gave the board before retiring from board. I wonder if that could be passed to Councillor White.
Yes, Chair, I'll make a note of that.
I'm grateful. Can I have any nominations for Vice Chair, please?
I'd like to nominate Councillor Mike Lewis for the post of the Deputy Chair.
And I'm very happy to second that nomination. Do we have any other nominations? I don't think we've received any, have we?
No, Chair.
So So I suppose we should formally vote. Do you want to go around asking each person, Alison?
I think because there's only two of you there, I think that's carried. Do you agree, Steph?
Yeah. Well, I'm happy
Yes,
to.
it is, yes.
I'm happy.
Yes. Okay. Well, congratulations, Councillor Lewis.
Thank you very much.
And then the next item on the agenda, apologies for absence. We've done disclosure of interests. We've done the minutes of the previous meeting. I'm just going down scrolling down the report here. If I take them for accuracy and any matters arising at the same time, would that be meeting with everyone's approval?
Yes.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
So it's paragraph 29, which is on page 1. Anything there?
No.
Then page 2, going on down to paragraph 31 and 32 on page 2. Anything there?
No.
Then carrying on to down as far as paragraph 36 on page 3. Nothing there. On to page 4 of the minutes. Down to paragraph 39 on page 4, continuing on to page 5. And ending on page 5. Any either matters arising or matters of accuracy on that?
No matter arising or accuracy from myself.
Thank you. And obviously you weren't present, Councillor Lewis. So can I have those approved as the accurate minutes?
I'll approve them as accurate minutes.
Thank you very much. And normally I'd be signing a hard copy. In these strange times, Alison, what happens there?
Yeah, I think we'll either keep them for another time or we could do it perhaps via email.
Yeah, I'm happy to do an email signature, which seems to be accepted nowadays. I think Dave, if we perhaps pause, I think Dave's had to retreat from his screen. He's back. You back with us, Dave?
Yeah. Back with it.
Yeah, no problem. So flipping back to the next item, it's the audit plan, agenda item 5A. And Jeff, are you going to deal with that?
Yes, Chairman, that is the proposal.
Okay. I think, Jeff, you've got some updating information to give us, which obviously isn't on the agenda, but it's very recent developments that you can update us on. Is that correct?
Yes, Chair. As requested, Chairman's requested that I update local pension board some recent developments at national scheme level, and also to update local pension board members with how the pension administration section has coped during the crisis, and how that has affected its dealings with our pensioner and deferred and active members. I reported to committee earlier this month that the robustness and resilience of the pension administration section has been a beacon of light during the crisis in terms of its ability to discharge its duties during this time. And a great credit to our ICT colleagues in Swansea Council for facilitating the ability to work from home and supporting the quite resource intensive systems that our pensions admin staff have to use, because it's very data heavy, and as the chairman alluded to, it does put pressure on bandwidth as you're trying to work from home. However, we can report no difficulties in paying all the 4 pensions payroll and pension runs during the last 4 months, and all lump sums, although some may have been paid a few days late, we haven't failed to actually pay those lump sums. And as I'll talk about later on in the report, when we move to the breaches report, that's largely to do with the inability of members being able to show us the requisite scheme documentation, i.e. bringing in birth certificates, marriage certificates, documentation that we're required to have before we can release their pension lump sums. Ordinarily, they would pop into the office, we'll take a copy, jobs are good, and we can release their pension. However, obviously because of restrictions on movement in the early days of the lockdown and subsequent reluctance perhaps of members to have physical interaction, that has proved a difficulty, and also access to physical mail has caused some hurdles to get over. However, members of our admin staff have on a rota basis still committed to come into the office to collect the mail, sort the mail, scan the mail, and disseminate it amongst the team so they can carry on doing their work. So it's a great credit to my colleagues in the pensions admin team for being able to continue in their duties in supporting and delivering pensions to our members.
Just pausing there, Jeff, before you move on, if the board agrees, then I think we ought to add our appreciation to what Jeff has just said to the staff of the pensions section. Not only the admin, who've obviously been impacted, as Jeff has explained, but the whole section. Obviously, the investment arm of it has also had more work because of the coronavirus situation. So if the board agrees with me, we could add our thanks to the whole section.
Yes, I'm happy.
Yes, I'm happy to.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And perhaps Alison, that can be recorded and convey, perhaps Jeff can convey it to them.
Quite happy to, Chairman.
Thank you, Jeff. So I think there were, you had an update on McLeod and the cap as well.
Chairman, I think David is trying to catch your attention, Chairman.
Ah, yes.
At the last meeting, if I remember rightly, Jeff, you spoke about the COVID, what would happen, and there could be a hit on the pension funds. Has that been the case so far, or is it too early to say yet?
Quite happy to cover it here, David.
Is that not covered on the agenda later, Jeff, or would you prefer to go into more detail now?
At your behest, Chairman. It is covered later on the agenda, the financial impact of the crisis on the asset valuations, etc.
I tell you what, Dave, if we wait till then,
yes,
if you want any more detail, then I'll remember that I did intervene to cut off what was going to be said now, and I'll allow a lot of latitude for follow-up questions.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah, accepting that, yes.
Okay, thank you. Jeff.
As the chairman alluded to, during this interim period since we last met, the government has issued consultation on a remedy for McLeod. As you recall, the McLeod case pervades all public sector pensions, and it's in relation to addressing the issue of inequality between the sexes in getting access and actual quantum of benefits received. We've reported the potential impact at a finger in the air guesstimate level, at a scheme level, and also at a local level. obviously impacted the accounts last year. The actuary has taken it into consideration whilst doing his 2019 valuation. However, there still wasn't a firm remedy as a result of the court case. As I say, MHCLG has issued consultation papers on their proposed remedies. They're out for consultation until the 8th of October. The devil will be in the detail, I presume, and there are lots of rabbit holes within that load of papers that accompany the guidance. You know, practitioners have already flagged up a number of issues which could be a difficulty in implementing it, and the smallest of which is the sheer amount of work required to go back and revisit all these calculations. Because obviously each member, because as a result of the remedy, board members, there will be a degree of election and discretion for the member to choose which way to go, and one could be more beneficial than the other. So when you're introducing so much variability in the remedy, you know, it's just going to create a whole load of work. However, you know, there's an opportunity to respond to that consultation, as I say, until the 8th of October, and then the final regulations hopefully will be relayed, where we can finally resolve the issues relating to McLeod.
Excellent. Jeff, is Swansea intending to respond to the consultation individually, or is it thought that's best done through a pool consultation, or indeed both?
I think we've been requested by certain boards that we're represented of to submit a formal response on this, because it's such the impact of it is so wide ranging, and as I say, lots of the response is granular in that how it impacts certain situations, because not everyone's situation is the same, because we're talking about individuals here, aren't we? And how they move between schemes, their circumstances may be different, say the timing of when they move from one scheme to another, because we're talking about final salary, career average, and those critical dates when you move. So no, the intention is to submit a Swansea specific scheme, and also that will feed into a Wales Pension Partnership response.
Okay, and does the timescale, what are the mechanics of the response? Does the timescale allow for that to be a committee, to go to committee and then go on behalf of committee, or do the timescales not allow that?
As I say, 8th of October is the closing date for consultation. The next committee date, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, is the second week of September. So that should allow that response to go to committee in this instance.
Okay, and I'm presuming then in the usual way it'll come to us as an information item, so that I mean, yeah, October. I imagine there's going to be a lot of work going into the response. But if all goes well, that we should be able to see that in a draft stage as well.
Yep, quite happy to share that with the chair, and also the chairman has observation rights at full committee as well.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, Jeff. And I think that the last update was on the latest developments on the cap.
Councillor Lewis, I think chairman wants to raise.
I can only see half of Councillor Lewis. I do apologise. It's the way the controls have come up on my screen. So yeah, these hands I'm not seeing very well. Perhaps, look, I mean, we try and run these with only the requisite amount of formality. Given there's only 3 of us, it might be simpler if we just speak.
Okay.
Councillor Lewis.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Jeff. As you mentioned earlier, this could result in a lot of work for your team. Have you got the resources in place to be able to cope with such a volume, which I imagine it will be, because I should imagine it'd be people who are already receiving pensions and people who are going to receive the pension at sometime later. So it seems to me like a tremendous amount of work to do. And have you and your team got resources available to be able to cope with that? Thanks.
In short, Councillor Lewis, I don't know at this stage, because until we know what the remedy in full looks like, we don't really know. However, if I was to hazard a guess, I definitely think this will have an impact on resourcing, in that we shall require additional resource. However, the amount of additional resource shall largely depend on how effective the system update that Hayward's, the system provider, can build to address lots of these, because hopefully lots of them will be formulaic, and there'll be a form of lookup table that they can just interrogate the system and the data that we've got on the pension system, Councillor Lewis, which will minimise the human input required to undertake the manual calculations. However, if that's not very efficient, it'll require more manual intervention, and the number of resourcing and the amount of resourcing will increase. I mean, the pensions officers practitioners group met, and this was just again a finger in the air. They were talking of 5 to 6 full FTEs just to get on top of this in the early days. So
Yeah.
watch this space, I'm afraid, Councillor Lewis.
Okay, thank you. Yes, the only other question I had was obviously these calculations could take time. And will whatever the outcome of the calculations be backdated, and to when?
I think that's whole premise of the issue, really, to address historical imbalances between the payments. So I think the cutoff date is early as 2008. I think, Councillor Lewis, in that's when the full impact of this inequality was felt. So yes, it'll all be backdated to when the recompense is required to. So again, don't want to be morbid. Say if the member is still alive, but however the estate will benefit. You know, they'll get what they're due in terms of the remedy.
Yeah, and I know you haven't got a crystal ball, but how much is this going to impact on the fund?
Well, on a valuation basis, it was. I think we touched on it. Is the valuation report on? Yes, it is here for information. If I can come back to that question, Councillor Lewis, at item 8A, when we hit the Triennial, because there is in the report itself, as I say, the actuary does allow for an estimate of the impact of McLeod.
Okay.
I think it's 1.5% of liabilities. So if our liabilities are, circa in the region of just over 2 billion, so it's 1.5% of 2 billion.
Okay, quite a lot.
Yeah, I think the other implication is that if members are going to be given options, then there's going to be a workload on the pensions, probably the admin side, with members seeking information, but there's going to be a union implication there as well. And Dave, we're going to have to be ready to give out information there to members who will be asking.
Yes.
Yeah, you're quite right, Chairman, because obviously it's a financial decision, and we're pensions administrators. We're not licensed to give financial advice, and obviously, there will be a degree of reliance on bodies like Unison to assist their members in making the right choice when they have to.
Yes, clearly limited to, and we're not regulated to give regulated advice either, but information giving, yeah, people, members. I mean, for some of them, it's going to be quite a difficult, finely balanced decision, isn't it? So that they will need a lot of information. Councillor White, Lewis, were you saying something?
No.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
I know. I'm just. I know Unison employ Lighthouse, the pension advisors. So we just refer them on to Lighthouse really for any advice on pensions.
Yeah, I think there's information we can give as well, but yeah, that's in the future. Yeah. Are there any more questions on that? No, I can't see any indications. Back to you then, Jeff.
And then the second issue that the chairman wanted me to brief local pension board on was that on the 21st of July, the government did respond to the consultation that was open on the proposed regulations around the 95k cap on exit payments. Just to remind local pension board members, I think if you recall, following the baby P scandal in one of the London boroughs, and the exit of one of their senior social services directors with quite a hefty exit payment, and the Daily Mail was full of reward for failure, etc., etc. So off the back of that, the government decided, no, this is not going to happen anymore. There's going to be a cap on exit payments as a result in the public sector, blah 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 blah, and issued consultation on the proposals to implement that scheme. Not understanding that within local government, which is a funded scheme, there are cost implications when giving someone early access to their pension, unlike the other unfunded schemes in the public sector. So there's been a lot of response to this consultation. We responded as a Wales Pension Partnership as a collective response in respect of this, highlighting those technical issues. The government has responded now to that consultation, and the proposals remain largely unchanged. All the public bodies remain in scope as they were previously, so they haven't exempted local government. However, there is some recognition that they will intend to amend local government pension scheme regulations in due course to compensate the member for any loss as a result of the 95k cap. I haven't got any detail about what those regulations will look like. It's a one-liner within the response, so to be determined, I'm afraid, Chairman.
So, as much else, watch this space, is it, Jeff?
Yes. So I mean it's an important and very timely thing for senior managers and elected members to be aware of, that and unfettered as it is, the regulations would create massive difficulties in reorganizing and reshaping the workforce of local government, because the early retirement voluntary redundant scheme is quite successful in that, and if there are no incentives for the individual to go early, you're a bit hamstrung in that regard.
Indeed. Any questions to Jeff on that? No. So unless there's anything else you need to bring us up to date on, Jeff, or you want to say, we can move to the first substantive item on the agenda, which is 5A, the audit plan. Over to you, Jeff.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a preamble to the whole of the agenda. Now we're moving into the substantive items. I have to switch my screen, I'm afraid, to my screen to be able to follow the documentation. So just to echo the Chairman's comments earlier, if any of the members of the board have any questions or wish to make comments, if you can please shout out and interrupt me as I go through, because I cannot see your faces or the hands as I go through the document, so that would be most appreciated. Also, again, as a preamble, as you see, this agenda is pretty hefty. It ostensibly it's the contents of two local pension boards agendas, because obviously we weren't able to hold March's local pension board meeting because of the lockdown. So apologies beforehand. The agenda is pretty robust, and I'll do my utmost to go through it swiftly, but without omitting any important detail for members' consideration. So thanks, Chair. 5A, audit plan. This is the audit plan that the Wales Audit Office have presented to Pension Fund Committee, outlining the areas that they were intending to look at in respect of the financial statements that we produced in respect of the financial year 1920, and also looking at the systems of financial control and governance around the management of the pension fund's assets and liabilities. So in this report highlights the areas that they're going to look at, and how they're going to implement their audit, and when they're going to report back to committee with their findings. Already, this document is out of date and inaccurate, really, in that they did hope to start their audit work on the financial statements throughout July and August. However, we've been notified from Wales Audit Office that they're not going to be able to start their audit on the pension fund during that period. They'll start sometime in September. We've got the statement of accounts later on in the agenda, and at this point, I'd just like to inform members of the board that we managed to produce the statement of accounts on time, deliver it to them, ready for audit, in line with the timetable that we agreed with them. However, they have been unable to commence their audit as they've outlined in this document. As you can see as well on page 14 of your papers, that they've decided to hold the audit fee at last year's level, which is very welcome, but also reflects, I suppose, the fact that they're more used to what we do, and they're more conversant with our systems, etc. And the level of audit work hasn't increased. If anything, probably has, will reduce as they get more comfort with our systems, etc. So they're due to report back to committee and then subsequently board when their audit work is complete. So I would suggest that would be the November committee and November local pension board. Happy to take questions on that, Chairman.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yep.
Councillor Lewis.
Yes, just a quickie, Jeff. Sorry to. Is there any reason why the Wales Audit Board has decided to look at the specific areas of our pension fund?
If you look at last year's audit plan and the audit plan before that, it's largely the same items. The high risk items. They'll do some sample testing on pensions in payment. Are we paying the right pension to the right person? Is it based on the final salary of that person, etc. Similarly with investments, they'll do some work around, do those investments exist? Do we have the documentation to ensure that we are the rightful owners of those investments? It's the usual stuff around financial control of the pension fund, the perceived high risk areas whereby there are lots of financial transactions, i.e. the payment of pensions, and then the important thing of making sure that we're looking after investing our assets appropriately. I would suggest those are the two high risk areas of the pension scheme, and their plan reflects that, really. Those are the two areas that they concentrate on.
So nothing's prompted them to look at those specific areas? No.
And then as a matter of course, I suppose perhaps your eyes are drawn to such areas, perhaps as fraud, etc., etc. They're required in their audit methodology to look at those areas to ensure that we have appropriate systems and controls in place to mitigate the likelihood of fraud and mispayments, etc. So, no, it's not dissimilar to previous years or their audit plan in respect of the other 8 pension funds in Wales.
Thank you.
Can I ask Jeff, in regard to like any future developments, will Brexit have an impact on this now? We don't really know where we're going to stand, whether we got a deal or not, do we? At the moment, it's all up in the air. It's only 4 months away.
How would it affect Wales Audit Office's audit plan? I couldn't surmise, David, but you're quite right. I mean, the full impact of Brexit and how it affects our investments and is not clear at this time.
Right, cheers, thank you.
Jeff, if I've understood you correctly, the start of the audit has had to be delayed, has it?
Correct.
I mean, if things develop in a different direction virus-wise and we don't see the improvement, are there any implications for us if we receive a late audit report? Or if it has to be substantially delayed?
There are no associated audit regulations in respect of the pension fund. The only statutory regulation which is time constrained is the production of the annual report. And we need to produce the annual report and have that approved before December of this year in relation to the financial year 1920. So that is still achievable, and that is the only statutory deadline that we're required to meet in respect of the pension fund statement of accounts. So the actual audit and the ISA 260 is not time constrained in respect of the pension fund. It is in the respect of the council, but not the pension fund, which is a bit of anomaly, I suppose, in that respect.
Right. So is it that its main purpose is providing reassurance or assurance to us and the committee and the council as a whole?
You will still get the full ISA 260 report. However, in answer to your question, that is not time constrained. So we're not required to report that to committee by a certain date. We are required to report it to committee, but not by a certain date in respect of the pension fund.
Okay. That's useful. Any further questions on this item? No, I'm flipping in between the screens here. So moving on then to our draft funding strategy, item 6A on page 20.
Thank you, Chairman. This is required to be put before Pension Fund Committee for approval as it sits alongside the Triennial Valuation report, which, as you see later, will be in the excluded part of the exempt part of today's agenda. So this document informs the valuation process. It's the strategy which sits behind the valuation, which is implemented every 3 years. And within this draft funding strategy statement are key principles and overarching strategy deliberations that the Pension Fund Committee need to adopt to instruct the actuary to do his valuation. So, for example, if I just get down to the detail to give you a bit more flavour of what I'm talking about, because obviously, you'll be aware of the investment strategy, and now we've got the funding strategy and why they're different. So the funding strategy deals with principles around, for example, recovery period. What is an acceptable recovery period to implement the valuation. Also, dealing and grouping with smaller employers, such as the community councils. Do we treat them as one group? How do we deal with employer guarantees? What the expectation is in respect of guarantees, so we can, if we ensure we get guarantees from sponsoring employers, we can use more favourable assumptions for those employers who have those sponsoring body guarantees. So this document outlines lots of those underlying principles which inform the valuation process and thereby shapes the actuary's views on how he can formulate his contribution schedule payable by employers. And that's another important overarching principle in that when he sets those contributions for employers, we're seeking to minimize the volatility of those contributions from contribution to contribution, so there isn't a budget implication for employers. So we're not asking them to go from 15% to 25%. There is some degree of understanding and consideration given to their budget constraints and their funding difficulties that they may have in respect of that. So committee approved this funding strategy statement, which would inform the 2019 valuation, and happy to take questions on it, Chairman.
So it's before us for information. Any questions for Jeff on it?
No.
No.
I'm happy to note the report.
Thank you. Yeah, and I've got no questions either, Jeff. So
Thank you, Chairman.
the next item for us again for information is the business plan.
Thank you, Chairman. I suppose the next two items really are annual items, standing items of the agenda. In that, the operational documents which can be for committee for approval, and it's the business plan. In line with good practice, the pension fund produces a business plan on an annual basis, which informs their work plan going forward. It's a dynamic document and is updated to reflect changes. For example, the response to the McLeod consultation that the chairman has already highlighted will be added onto this work plan going forward now that that's been issued. However, the key highlights there within the business plan here, you can see are largely operational issues, and it's just a signpost and keep as a public record line items that the pension fund hopes to achieve during the next financial year. So, for example, implementing the triennial valuation contribution rates with our new employers, finalising the GMP valuation, etc. Continuing to work with WPP and implementing the pooling strategy. Also appended to the business plan is an outlined draft budget. Of interest, I suppose, to local pension board and committee are the discretionary budget then within that, which highlights expenditure in relation to pension fund committee and local pension board. And historically, that budget has largely been spent on training and travel to training, etc. In respect of that. Also, there's the risk register on here, which highlights and appertains mitigating controls that the admin authorities got in respect of high level and operational risks that we've identified. Again, that's a live document as well. So happy to take questions on that as well, Chairman.
Any questions?
Not a question, more of a statement, really. I noticed in the review of the business plan targets year ending 31st of March 2020, they all seem to have been achieved or ongoing, so well done on that.
Thank you, David.
Did we receive this in draft, Jeff? It looks familiar.
No, you'd received it last year, as I say, it's an annual document.
And it hasn't. Yes, it hasn't.
I think, for example, same format. As I say, lots of them are annual items. You get new items added on. So, for example, remeasure carbon exposure across the. That's a new action for this financial year. It wasn't there last year, but no, you're quite right, Chairman. You're not seeing double There is
Always
largely
a relief to know.
it is largely a cut and paste job for the majority of the document. However, it needs to be updated for new items for the year.
Can I just have one question, Chair, to Jeff? In the light of the McLeod ongoing process, have you included, as I said earlier, alluded to earlier, have you included any extra in the business plan to incorporate any extra work that the team would have to do?
No, councillors, we haven't. Until we can quantify it, and as I say, appraise how much we want or need to implement the remedy. I don't think we've got anything meaningful to put for the committee to ask for their approval on really at this stage in time.
Fine. Thank you.
Unless there's, oh, hang on now, what's happening here? My screen is going wild. I don't know if anybody else's has. Is everybody still present?
Yes, Chair.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Has everybody else? Now you've all come back. Did anybody else's screen go odd then?
No.
Or was it
No.
just mine? Okay. Well, I did forecast some glitches. Okay, that looks to everybody looks to have returned. So you alluded to the next item on the agenda. That previous one was for information, and this one is as well. Jeff, item 6C, trustee training. Well, yes, trustee, but training for board and committee. Jeff.
Thank you, Chairman. As I alluded to earlier as well, yeah, this is an annual report as well that we're required to bring before committee, just to outline the training plan for committee members. And I think, Chairman, you have highlighted this previously, and apologies for not amending it in that. I suppose that it should reflect the training requirements of the local pension board as well, because largely it's been an inclusive regime in terms of training, in that whenever training has been arranged, it's been for both the pension fund committee and the local pension board, and that is a principle and policy that will be taken forward now, that all the training which will be arranged specifically on site or off site will be for both local pension board and committee, unless it's specific to either body. So before you is a report which highlights the need for committee members and local pension board members to be adequately trained and have the adequate knowledge and skills base so they can undertake their roles. And there are a number of bodies such as SIPFA, the pensions regulator, which highlight the importance of having adequately trained local pension board and pension fund committee members on board. And as you're all aware, you've all taken part in our lovely day trip up to Llangrannog Wells recently, which I'm sure you all thank me for taking you up there for that piece of training. But I think it was very useful. It was quite comprehensive, and again allowed you to mix with your peers from the other pension fund authorities. So there are plans for more Wales Pension Partnership training going forward. I think some is in train at the moment to be arranged, and you'll be informed of and notified of the dates and the topics that are included within that. And also the report asks for approval for us to take part in some national knowledge assessment of our pension fund committee members and local pension board members. Members were asked during lockdown to undertake an online assessment, just to gauge, the level. It's like a mini test, basically, and put in place by our advisors, Hymans, just a sense check if we're all right or a basket case in terms of our knowledge and skills, and drastic action was required. I'm pleased to say that they were very pleased with the results, and as across Pension Fund Committee and Local Pension Board, I think we scored 69%, which is highly credible. Noting some of the members are very new, on especially the Local Pension Board side, they were very new. However, I did excuse Rosemary from doing it because she was only a member for one board meeting. She hasn't had any training whatsoever, and so I don't think it would be fair to ask Rosemary to undertake the assessment. So that was pleasing. However, it did highlight some areas that need attention in terms of how well the members did in that particular section, and also in the responses at the end of the questionnaire, where members were asked to identify areas they wanted additional training on. So we're going to work with our advisors to tackle those areas and implement training to address that in the coming months, Chairman.
Excellent, thank you, Jeff.
Can I ask a question, Jeff?
Yeah,
Dave. I gather training's ongoing and things like that, and COVID. Will some of the training now be online? Because it'll be like take me for instance. I'm shielding, and a second wave is due, maybe a third wave is due. So would that training be online rather than like face to face?
I think there is a proposal, David. Yeah, that is extremely sensible, and even if a physical event does take place, I'm sure there will be a parallel online access to that event for attendees like yourself who are shielding and do not want to or cannot attend in person.
I've had invites by certainly Hymans Robinson and I think others to webinars that they're doing
Correct.
online. Have you not had those invites, David?
No, I haven't. No.
Oh, I was told as a result of your participation in the acknowledgement assessment, because they've got your emails now, they asked me if it was all right to contact you directly. And I said yes. So you should have all received invites to their webinars that they've been holding. I know the chairman of the Pension Fund Committee has attended a couple remotely, and he said they're pretty good.
Yeah, I've attended two, and they are very good. Quite intensive at times, but I'd recommend them, and they're very easy to access at home. What's the best way of David taking forward access now, Jeff? Is it worth you reiterating, or should he do it himself?
I'll remind them and check they've got David's contact details correct.
Unless they've gone into my like you say scam folder, my spam folder, I'll check. But no, we'll check. But I don't reckon I get a lot of webinar invites to being from different bodies, different training. I don't think I've come across a unit, across a pension one yet.
Okay, perhaps after the meeting, David, if you check your spam folder, and if there's nothing there, then perhaps is it okay, Jeff, if he contacts you?
I'll remind Hymans of David's contact details and ensure that he's added onto the circulation list.
Yeah. Jeff, will we be receiving feedback on the knowledge assessment? I'd be particularly interested if there were common themes where perhaps we didn't do as well.
Yeah, you should have had an individual result sheet on an individual basis, and I've had a teleconference with Hymans on the results as a whole. And as you quite rightly point out, it does identify areas where both the committee and the pension board hasn't scored as well as in other sections. Right. For example, and again, it's not a reflection because it is a very dry subject and we only really deal with it every 3 years, is the actuarial valuation process. I mean, both the Pension Fund Committee and the Local Pension Board members didn't score as well on that section as they did on other sections. Similarly with local government accounting, again, probably not your favourite topic, either yourselves or the Pension Fund Committee, and understandably, Both sets of trustees didn't perform as well in those two sections as the others. However, I was chatting with Hymans. You know, is there a lot of mileage or even any desire really for both these boards to have full on in-depth training sessions on pension fund accounting and the valuation process? In that, you know, would you add much value as a result of having training on those two areas? So we are having ongoing discussions. They're keen, obviously, because they've got training to sell to us based on that. So I'm trying to push back on certain areas whereby I don't think there will be much value add. But for example, lots of members expressed a desire for more ESG training. It's a hot topic. You know, both committee and board members are very engaged on the topic, very interested. Obviously, you know, you get lots of feedback from your members on this all the time, and you know, it's an area where perhaps it would add value. Although, having said that, you all did very well on the training. On this section. However, it's an area which is constantly evolving in terms of what pension funds can do and in respect of that.
That's interesting. I suppose it makes training easier if there are common areas rather than each individual needing different bits of training. It does beg the question to my mind, if it's not essential or desirable knowledge, why they were asking questions on it. And I suppose the starting point would be, what do we absolutely need to know, what's desirable to know, and start from there. As you say, that they're selling training as well, of course.
I did raise this with them on the severity of the assessment, because hands up, I went through the assessment and it was solid. It was solid. I mean, I did it myself on a blind basis. You know, I didn't have my textbooks open, I swear, and I think I struggled to get like 85% in it, and it was ambiguous, some of the areas, and I did feed that back to them that it was quite a high bar to achieve, you know, a good mark. And it's commendable that all committee members and local pension board members did as well as they did. And I think, Chairman, they're a commercial organisation. They had one eye on, you know, upselling us training off the back of this. Oh gosh, didn't you do badly in that? Here you go. I can sell you, you know, 3 months worth of, you know, intensive training to get your board members up to speed. £20,000 later, there you go. Thank you very much. I think there's a degree of that with it, but no disservice to Hymans. Those areas are expected of you know, for board members to have a working knowledge of those areas, not necessarily to score 100% in all of them, but definitely to have a working knowledge of those areas, such as accounting implications and valuation implications.
I've just checked my emails just now. I've received my first one on Tuesday for a web. So it must have been a delay, but I haven't received anything prior to that. So I must be on the system now.
Okay, there certainly were earlier ones, but I'm crossed fingers. If you've started getting them, then let's hope they continue.
Yeah. Thank you.
I suppose that does make a training plan that much easier to formulate going forward. And we did I understand you right? We're going to have a sort of feedback, some sort of report on how the board did as a whole. Obviously, not giving away individual information, but we're going to have a report on that. Did I understand, Jeff, in due course?
I'm quite happy to share that with you and bring it to you for information. Yeah, it'll be totally anonymized, obviously, and it'll be at board level. But for your information, you can see the areas which perhaps
I think it would be useful, maybe as a reminder to us as to training as well. Although I think our attendance at training is pretty good, isn't it?
No, excellent. That was commented on, Chair, at how by Hymans, because obviously this went out nationally to other pension funds, at the excellent response rate of both committee and board. So,
going back to the report, I'd certainly endorse what you said at the outset. in my experience of the practice is that as board we're offered exactly the same training as committee, and not least is the value of meeting committee members and exchanging experiences there over and above the value of the actual training we attend. And I'd just be happy if that was made more explicit in the report to reflect the actual practice.
Of course, Chair. That's my oversight.
You did. No, you said it at the beginning. So yeah. Any further questions on this item? No. So on, it's for information again, isn't it? So the next item, the draft accounts at 6D.
Thank you, Chairman. This relates obviously to the audit plan presented as the first item on the agenda. This is a subsequent draft statement of accounts that we've produced in respect of the financial year 1920. It'd be remiss of me before I go into the report is to thank Karen and the investment and accounting team for being able to produce this in line with the required timetable by Wales Audit Office, because obviously lockdown occurred just as we were entering into financial year end close down procedures, sort of beginning of March, and for her and her team to have been able to produce this in line with the quite demanding timetable that WAO required is a testament to their professionalism. So thank you to Karen and the rest of the guys in the investment and accounting team. The draft statement of accounts that you've got before you, you'll be familiar with it now, having received it on an annual basis. It largely sets out the financial transactions of the pension fund in dealing with our members and employers, but also importantly sets out what our assets look like in terms of our investments, etc., which we've got to meet those future liabilities. As I say, I've got it on my screen here to scroll through it. I'm only intending to pick out some key items on it, in respect of perhaps you can see there a couple of new employers that we've got in the scheme. Councillor Lewis, our erstwhile colleague on the Pension Fund Committee, Councillor Thomas, you can see Mumbles Community Council is now an employer within the scheme. They've come on board this year, and that was at Councillor Thomas's behest, really, to encourage them to become members of the scheme. So their employees are members of the scheme now. And then another note which board members usually are interested in is the note in relation to our dealings with the Wales Pension Partnership and the costs in relation to that. And I think that is on page, apologies, Chairman, because I have to scroll through the document as I switch between screens. I think it's later on in the document. Gosh.
It's page 88, Chair.
Oh, thank you, Karen. It's on page 88, and which outlines costs, etc., in relation to the Wales Pension Partnership, which we've explicitly annotated there in agreement with the Wales Audit Office and the Wales Pension Partnership. As I say, you're used to seeing this document on an annual basis. You've had largely the same document, albeit the numbers have changed year in, year out. So happy to take questions on areas of interest to local pension board members. So, sorry, Chairman, I can't hear you. You're on mute.
Apologies. I was just asking if there were any questions for Jeff on this.
No questions.
I think it.
Oh, sorry, Chairman. Perhaps this might be opportune to address when I talk about the net asset statement, to address David's question earlier on about the volatility at year end, because obviously this takes us up to the 31st of March 2020, and as you can see, the asset valuations, markets suffered 17% fall from February to March, and that's reflected obviously at year end, whereby we're just below the 2 billion there. However, since that date, pleased to say that markets have rebounded, and the latest valuation that we've got at the end of June would take asset valuations back to more or less pre-COVID levels. So there was a great deal of volatility in the market leading up to 31st of March. All the lockdowns were being implemented not only in the UK but in Europe and the rest of the world, and the markets took that as a flight to quality, exiting equity investments and going into safe havens such as bonds, property, and other more stable asset classes. And Councillor Lewis, you'll be pleased to know, Councillor Thomas asked again why one of those safe havens wasn't gold, because obviously that's one of Councillor Thomas's favourite safe havens to be invested in is gold, and he again questioned why at that point in time we hadn't done likewise and divested into gold. It was very volatile. Again, hitting the usual suspects in terms of types of stocks which are affected. Like travel stocks, holiday stocks, retail stocks. All of those were very adversely affected as a result of lockdown, because obviously the lockdown would majorly impact their ability to do business. However, since that time, as lockdown has eased and there is some degree of normality returning to the world, the markets have bounced back. However, the outlook, I would suggest, isn't rosy and won't be a straight line. There will be more volatility ahead, as I think Councillor Lewis alluded to earlier on, that there is a second wave later on, and the full impact of that is felt. And also, at the moment, we've still got furlough schemes in place. We've still got all the local grants flowing through the system. So I would suggest that autumn, when the taps are turned off, the full effects of the lockdown and the full effects of COVID on the workforce are felt at that time rather than at this time. So we're not out of the woods yet. However, there was quite a surprising bounce back from those March valuations in the following months.
You mentioned there about the bounce back. I know you are right to say there'll be caution ahead. You mentioned two sectors there: the retail sector and the travel industry, and that's two industries. You have to turn the newspapers on every day. They mention the hits the travel industry is taking on the airplanes and all that, and the retail industry, where shops, major chains, is really struggling. So you are right to point out, okay, we've had a bounce back, but going forward, it's going to be a bit of a rocky ride, I think.
Most definitely, David. And further to the Triennial Valuation report later on, the actuary obviously has made certain assumptions about asset valuations at that point in time when he did the valuation. And obviously, the volatility that we experienced in March, he was aware of that. And although hasn't required him to issue a post-valuation amendment as a result of that volatility, he has signalled lightly that there will probably be an impact in 2021 when he comes back to do the valuation at that point in time, because the quite drastic impact of it will flow through and have a compounding effect leading up to 2021.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
Any other questions for Jeff on this?
Just one, Jeff.
Yes.
You mentioned the Welsh pool and the contributions that we have to pay to them. Have they been surpassed by the increased discounts we get from companies? And is it working out as well as we thought it would work out?
That's a difficult question to answer at this early stage, Councillor Lewis. I mean, as a direct correlation of savings made, I would have to honestly answer no, because as you quite rightly, as I pointed out to committee and local pension board, we had some pretty attractive fee deals in place as Swansea only at that point in time. So our rationale and objective for entering into the Wales Pension Partnership was not necessarily fee savings, overt fee savings that regard, but it was the expectation that our returns that we would get would be a lot better. So the return expectations would outweigh those fee savings that we perhaps have foregone. And in this instance, yes, I mean, later on you can see in the report where I give you the Wales Pension Partnership update, they are ahead of benchmark. The fund that we're invested in, the Wales Opportunities, the Global Opportunities Fund, they are ahead of benchmark. Not as well as they said they would achieve at the outset, but they are ahead, and it's done on a 3-yearly basis. This is the first year, so they are 1% ahead of that benchmark, whereas the WPP Global Growth Fund, which is the alternative fund we could have gone into, which is largely made up of the legacy managers of the other 7 Welsh pension funds, that is below benchmark. So the vehicle, the Wales Pension Partnership vehicle that we're invested in at this point in time is ahead of benchmark.
Good, thank you.
Okay, anything else on that? No. So again, that's an information item. So if we move forward to item 6E on the agenda, and again, it's Jeff.
Thanks, Chairman. Again, if you could read this report in tandem with the previous item, Chairman, in respect to the draft statement of accounts and also the audit plan earlier on in the agenda, in that it's a requirement from our auditors that we make a disclosure, a statement to them on how we manage fraud and related parties disclosures within the pension fund. As you can see in the appendix to this report, there are a set of questions that they asked of senior management in respect to the pension fund, how we deal with and address and mitigate certain issues. And we can see our response last year and our response this year on how we address those certain items. And in the main, they largely remain unchanged. However, some of them are updated for changing circumstances and the different economic landscape that we're operating in now. Happy to take questions, Chairman.
Are there any questions arising out of that? I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Unless anybody has any last-minute change of mind. Again, it's an information item. So on to 6F for the breaches report, which is an old friend. The new breaches are the ones marked with a tick, aren't they, in the end column?
That's right, Chairman.
So we've seen a number. Well, we've seen most of this before, but Jeff, if you want to deal with the new items.
Well, the new items, although they are new items, they're usual items that you're used to seeing. Yes. However, their dates are changed, and the one which stands out, I suppose, is, and I alluded to it earlier on, is the ability to process lump sums within 1 month of the member leaving, and you can see a slight deterioration in performance in respect of that metric, and that was largely down to the lockdown and the inability for us to finally conclude that piece of work due to the inability of members to get us the information that we required because of the lockdown. However, as you can see, once we have received that information, 99.9% of those lump sum benefits were paid within the required time frame. Again, contributions. 3 employers have not paid contributions within the required timescale. They're again, that's the smaller bodies, bodies with maybe 1-2 members, and I think largely they're the smaller community councils, and they're low risk in that regard. In terms of, you know, they're good for it. However, it's just the timeliness of receiving it that we're required to report to committee as a breach. Well, it might be opportunity to also mention, Chairman, you know, all the employers, because lots of the employers now, because of arrangements in local authorities, are sort of third sector, quasi, you know, private sector employees, and we can't ignore the fact that the lockdown and the ongoing situation would have had an impact on their cash flows. For example, you know, Titanian housing, for example, you know, it's well reported the impact on the housing sector, social housing sector. Similarly, Freedom Leisure and Parkwood Leisure, you know, the closing of attractions, etc., is going to adversely impact their cash flows. However, we're pleased to report we haven't had any difficulties, overt difficulties expressed by our employers in those sectors on being able to remit their members' pension contributions over to the fund. Don't know if this may or may not change, and senior management are in contact with senior management of those organisations to you know, constantly monitor their health from a financial point of view, that is, and apply triage if necessary in terms of you know, early payment plans, deferment of contributions, etc. You know, we're willing to have that conversation if it can help alleviate their financial pressures at this point in time, so that they're able to continue to be viable employers.
I know, you know, Councillor Mike Lewis will be aware of this, that Swansea Council Cabinet and Council have been very supportive of Freedom Leisure. You know, in regard payments, looking after their staff as well, doing top-ups. You know, and I think what I did hear once in Swansea Council and another employer, I think it's Kent, but with only 2 councils in the Freedom pool of companies areas they run, the only ones to offer top-ups. So well done to Swansea Council, and I know our members, you know, who work for Freedom, are really, really pleased with the support they've had from Swansea Council.
Thank you. Well, I mean, what you said at the end there, Jeff, is good news, appreciating your warning that things may change, but good news so far. There is one novel breach there, Jeff, the GDPR breach, which looks to be a classic autofill, which is a classic gotcha, isn't it?
Yes.
Well known. I see that the control, I'm just trying to flip between screens now. The control there is staff reminded of the importance of checking the email autofill. I'm always a bit cautious about controls that rely on staff, on human intervention. But I'm not sure that there is anything that anybody's come up with regarding autofill, is there?
No. Yeah, it is an unfortunate case, and we've looked at, you know, any mitigating controls, etc., without creating an industry in itself to have like a second check of someone before they send an email, which I think would be unfeasible. It's just we felt that this remedy was appropriate, noting, as you said, Chairman, the incident. Like if this was endemic, you know, everyone was sending wrong emails to people, we'd look at it a bit more in depth and look for a smarter solution. However, it's a one-off, and we felt that this remedy would suffice in this instance. However, if that changes and it does become an issue throughout the section, we'll look at it again.
Anything else on the breaches? No. So moving swiftly on to the Wales Pension Partnership Business Plan. And again, this is an information item for us, isn't it?
Yes. It's Wales Pension Partnership playing catch up. I would suggest for this item, Chairman, as a requirement of the inter-authority agreement, the host authority was required to produce a business plan. However, in fairness to them, you know, their work agenda has been pretty full in the last couple of years as we're trying to get the pension partnership up and running. So they have now. Finally produced a business plan, which again, like ours, seeks to inform members and the board of their work plans going forward, and with the appropriate and accompanying budget and training plan and etc. that goes with it. So it's appended to the document, and happy to answer any questions about it, Chairman.
Anything, Councillor Lewis? Dave White. I don't know if it's because of, but I know that there was a push from the board chairs group for Carmarthen to produce, or the pool, I suppose, to produce a business plan. The one thing that seems lacking in it from my perspective is anything about engagement with member representatives. And I know that's something the committee chair feels strongly about as well.
Thank you for reminding me, Chairman. When this was approved by committee, it was approved. I'd like to confirm. However, he asked me to write to the host authority and the other 7 pension funds requesting that an additional item be added onto the work plan to reflect scheme member representation on the joint governance committee of the Wales Pension Partnership, which I've subsequently done, just to provide some feedback on how that is progressing. It was progressing in the background anyway, and I think it was a mission that it wasn't included in the formal work plan, because legal counsel has been sought as to how best to be able to implement that, because of the way the current inter-authority agreement and legislation stands. It can't be implemented very easily. However, they've taken legal counsel, both in-house and externally commissioned QC advice on how best to take it forward. So at a JGC level, I think a report is due sometime in the autumn, Chairman. And you're quite right. The chairman of the committee has been chasing up the host authority on progress re this item, and so he's been promised a report later this calendar year in the autumn sometime.
I wonder if this board, if there'd be any use in this board endorsing the approach of the committee, which was to approve the business plan, but with the addition of some work around member engagement. I mean, it seems to me that member engagement is one of the most important things that could be done regarding support for the fund and the scheme as a whole. What do members think?
It's if you don't mind me speaking.
No.
Well, it's already been passed by committee. It probably would add a little weight to it, but they have to act on, I would imagine, the committee's recommendation. So yes, we could certainly add our little weight to it. It would put, and as you said earlier, member engagement is a prime driver in the Wales Pension, should be a prime driver in the Wales pension pool. So yes, if the chair thinks that we should support it, yes, I don't see why not.
I think it might add weight to the position of the. I mean, it was the committee as a whole who decided it, obviously, but it might add weight to the chair of the committee's position as well. I'm not saying he's a lone voice on the pool, but my impression is not everyone on that pool shares his views. What do you think, David?
I'm happy to go along. Yeah, I'm happy to go along with the decision.
If we just say, would it be enough for us just to say that we received the approach of the committee and supported, approved of it? Steph, do you have any comments on that as a form of wording?
Yes, that's correct. I think just say that it is a form of wording.
And Alison, does that accord with you?
Yeah, that's fine. I can put that in the minutes, Chair. Thank you.
So we've received an update on the approach of the committee. Jeff, were you signalling you wanted to say something, or was it just?
I was requesting a cup of tea for my daughter.
Oh, well, if you get that sort of service.
Jeff, I live around the corner from you. My 2 sugars.
Okay.
Dear, I didn't realise you'd arranged such services. Okay. So yeah, Jeff. So we're just thinking about saying we received information about the approach of the committee and that we approved of it.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Do we need to formally record that, Alison, or as you say, that there's only 3 of us and we're all in agreement?
Yeah, I put that in the minutes for you, Chair.
Thank you. Anything else on this before we move on? No. So 6H, information regarding the position of Rathbone training.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, this is quite neat, really, in that this ties in with a number of other documents that were on the agenda earlier on, notably the funding strategy statement and how we deal and treat certain employers within the scheme. And local pension board and the pension fund committee are used to receiving reports asking approval to admit certain employers into the scheme as a result of their working relationships with sponsoring employers, and how those sponsoring employers want to change the way they deliver services requires the engagement of third parties. However, to protect the pension arrangements of the employees discharging those services and to protect their LGPS membership, we have to admit their new employer into the scheme. However, it's not a done blindly. It's done with certain caveats and requirements required of the admission body and the sponsoring employer, in that we require certain guarantees before we admit them. And unhappily, subsequently, we've been informed that Rathbone Training, one of the admitted bodies from the sponsoring employers, Gower College and Swansea Council, has gone into liquidation, and unfortunately, that means they need to cease as an employer in the scheme. However, luckily, there are no active members within the scheme. They're all either pensioners with pensions in payment or deferred members of the scheme. And two of the original employees who were transferred have now left Rathbone Training and have transferred their benefits to a new employer anyway. So there are no active employees within the scheme. So the actuary will now have to undertake an exit valuation for this employer, and any outstanding unfunded liabilities will be revisited first upon the administrators of Rathbone Training, but then if that's unsuccessful, upon the original sponsoring employers, Gower College and Swansea Council. There are a couple of outstanding invoices in respect of Rathbone Training, nearly £70,000 in respect of early access charges, respect of former employees of Gower College, and about £2,000 in respect of actuarial charges in respect of employees rechargeable to Swansea Council. So those have already been lodged with the administrators who have been appointed, dealing with the liquidation, and so we'll wait to see if they're paid in part or in full. Again, if not, those costs will be revisited on the sponsoring employers, Gower College and Swansea Council. This is the first instance of an employer failure that I'm aware of in my lifetime in dealing with the fund. And I cannot say whether it's COVID related. I haven't been able to determine if it's directly COVID related. However, I would suggest it is not, as it was set in train quite a while before lockdown was felt, and we were notified of it during the height of lockdown. So to suggest this is directly COVID related, I think would be a bit premature. I think they were in trouble before the full effects of the COVID-19 crisis were felt. However, I will confirm when the liquidators meeting is held and full facts of the winding up evolves. Happy to take questions, Chairman.
In regards to some of the outstanding invoices, 69,000, to me is quite a lot of money.
Yep.
Is that just a one-off payment, or has that been built up over a long time and we haven't really kept an eye on them?
It's in respect of David, similar to the 95k cap that I updated members on earlier on, in that they as an employer have obviously agreed to the voluntary redundancy and early retirement of one of their members of staff. However, it's before normal retirement age, and by allowing that, there's an additional cost to the scheme.
So one-off payment rather than cost me. That's all right then.
Yeah,
That's okay
correct.
then. That's okay. And what would you said their sponsorship? Would their sponsorship now be liable? Being a Swansea Council?
Yes.
So we would then get the fees from Gower College and from Swansea Council instead.
Correct.
Yeah. Well, cheers. Thank you.
It does illustrate the value of the guarantees, doesn't it? Has there been any update from the administrators since the report was written, or is the situation still the same?
Situation still the same. I don't think they've had their creditors meeting as yet. Karen's nodding, shaking her head there. Obviously, she's been liaising and registering our interest in that regard. Yeah, we'll be notified when that meeting will be held and what assets are to be redistributed.
I can't imagine a training organisation's going to have a huge amount of assets. But either way, as far as the fund is concerned, we'll have our money either out of the assets or via the guarantees.
Correct. And there also may be subsequent liabilities arising out of the actuary's exit valuation as well.
Okay.
Can I just ask Jeff, Chair?
Yeah.
Would the monies outstanding include members' contributions?
Well, there are no active members anymore, Councillor Lewis.
Right.
So no contributions are due in that regard. They're all either deferred or pensioners now. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Anything further on that item? No. So item 6I on the agenda, resourcing, something you touched upon or you were asked about earlier, Jeff, in a slightly different context.
It is. This report doesn't necessarily address the question raised, i.e., additional resource as a result of additional work identified. This report just sought to it was an administrative report really to ensure that there was consistency in approvals, both within Swansea Council as the admin authority and also the Pension Fund Committee having sight of those decisions taken by the admin authority. As outlined in the report, the whole function of pensions, investment and pension admin now sits within finance and has done for the last 2 or 3 years. And the lead officer in finance is the Chief Finance Officer, Section 151 committee officer, and he recently implemented a senior staff restructure within the finance department to address job evaluation anomalies that have arisen since that process took place about 11 years ago now, I think I recall. He was keen and had support of Swansea Council's CMT and the Chief Exec and the leader to address those anomalies at senior officer level within the finance department. So that's in respect of officers in accountancy, revenues and benefits, the service centre, and then also the pension fund. And in respect of that, it directly affects four officers, sorry, in the pension fund. And just for consistency, it was brought to pension fund committee to approve those regradings as a result of that. So to your question, Chair, about resourcing in the larger context and in the context of Councillor Lewis's observations about additional work, re McLeod's and other developments, no, this does not address that. This report seeks to address historical anomalies in the grading structure of certain officers, and they're highlighted in 3.1.
Yes. Okay, and that was approved by the committee, so that's gone through. Any questions on it? No. So the next item on the agenda is the exclusion of the public for the remainder of the meeting. And the reasons are given then, agenda item 7. Would someone move that? Or first of all, I should ask if anybody's got any questions about the reasons being given for either legal or committee. I see none. And Councillor Lewis, I think you were moving?
Yes, I was moving.
Okay, and David? Are you in favour of us going into private, David? Hello? Oh.
Happy to second.
Yeah, and I'm happy to as well for the reasons given. So I presume that we need
go into stop the recording now, Chair. One moment.
Yeah.